to have a conversation with a broad spectrum of our stakeholders. Just so you know, we are recording the Insights. Insights is recorded every month and posted to our website for those people who can't attend on the day. So just be mindful of that when asking questions and providing commentary. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on throughout Australia today, and pay my respects to their connections to land, sea, and community. I also want to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today. I'm in very sunny and humid Sydney, so I'm talking to you today from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Please feel free to pop in the chat or which country you're joining in from today. So we are going to spend today looking at some of our findings from the workforce plan. For those of you that were at our summit a couple of weeks ago, you may or may have not been in the room when I presented the future workforce update, and the feedback that we got from that presentation was overwhelmingly very positive. One of the points that a number of people made is that they really wanted to be able to ask questions throughout the presentation. Unfortunately, that format didn't allow for that. So today we've got a cut down version of what I presented that Peter Adams is going to walk us through, so that we have an opportunity to have more of a conversation and questions can be asked, and we can, I guess, bring that qualitative context to the data that really is the secret sauce, that the reason that PSO works and is successful. We'll also provide a high-level project summary update, so you can see on where we're at with all of the projects, and then closing out with our calendar of events, what we've got coming up in the future. So before I'll hand over to Pete, who's going to walk us through the data. What I would suggest is we really do want this to be a conversation. So if you have a question, there are two ways with which you can ask it. One, raise your hand using the raise hand button, and the other is to pop a question in the chat. So Peter and I will respond to the raised hand question. Nathan St. John will have a first pass of those that are written in the chat, but we can incorporate both of those. So really encourage you to ask the question so we can get the best value out of this conversation. Over to you, Peter.
Great, thanks, Anthea. Hi everyone, great to be speaking with you all today, and absolutely please, jump in as we go through. There are some really interesting insights within this that we're keen to hear your thoughts on. So I guess starting off, if we have a bit of a look at the workforce planning that PSO undertakes as a part of our remit, it has undergone a great deal of iteration and evolution and maturation over the last few years. So shortly after PSO was established in around October of 2023, we put forward our first piece of workforce planning, which was really a bit of a scan of the energy workforce as a whole. It was quite sort of, I guess, basic in its data approach and data analytics that were within there, and also limited stakeholder engagement. And that was really due to, we hadn't established one team yet. We really hadn't established some of those relationships well. It was really early days within the organisation. So it was quite a I guess, high level initial piece of work. From there, we evolved through into 2024, where we had a much more mature interrogation of a lot of the data that was within it. We undertook some really great engagement with stakeholders. We undertook, I think, 12 or 13 workshops around around the country in both metropolitan and regional areas, and that really helped to shape our insights. We worked with some industry partners to write that workforce plan, and then off the back of that, we released that in August of last year. Off the back of that, we received some really great feedback on what industry and what industry partners want to see from the workforce plan for this year, which has been really beneficial and has really shaped our approach to what this year's workforce plan will look like. So you can see there we're in the throes of writing the 2025 energy sector workforce plan at the moment. It's coming along really well. We've done some great engagement ranging from workshops again around the country, a lot of one-on-one meetings and discussions. We've held some steering committee meetings with our strategic industry advisory body. We've had a survey out that many of you have contributed to, our summit, and really all of the discussions that have been taking place through all of our different team members across PSO, which has been great, coupled with the usual, heavy amount of work with Jobs and Skills Australia to look at data and to research a range of other information sources that are out there. So that's all really leading into the development of our 2025 workforce plan, which is maturing well at the moment, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you all about that as we release it and as we release consultation papers and things like that, which I'll talk with you about in the next steps section, which is at the end of this presentation. So I guess talking about workforce planning, a great paper that was written by Anthea and one of our research team members, Nathan St. John, back in 2015 was the Charging Electricity Industry, a Changing Workforce paper. It was really quite insightful. Took a really unique view on the workforce that was required for the energy sector moving forward. And it had some really unique views, but I think what we can say about it is that at that point in time, net zero wasn't even factored into it. It wasn't even, really on the horizon. We knew that there'd be evolution and change, and you can see there some of the range of changes as they were implemented. But net zero not really a factor. So we can see, there has been huge change in what's going to be required from the workforce in the future, and there'll continue to be things that pop up which we don't have visibility of. But a lot has changed a lot has stayed the same as well. We've got some really enduring problems within the energy sector in terms of attracting and retaining the workforce that we require. That we'll continue to work on, and they'll continue to pop up as ongoing issues. If we look at the occupational shortages and talk about enduring issues, this is certainly one of them. So we can see here there are 6 of our primary occupations there that are really, at the core of the energy sector, and there really hasn't been too much movement. So we can see, across electricians, across air conditioning and refrigeration mechanics, transmission line workers, electrical engineers, draftspeople, and your general electronic trades workers, all in shortage back in 2011 to 2015, and all still in shortage now. The one anomaly there is electrical engineering draftspeople and technicians. And while that's currently technically showing up as not in shortage at the moment, for all intents and purposes, we know that there's growth in that area. We know that there's a need, and so we suspect that while it might technically not be classed as being in shortage, we know that there's still growth required in that area. So not a huge amount of change in terms of the fact that we're still in shortage of workforce right across the range of occupations in the sector. But the drivers and level of demand have really changed. So what we've got on the left is the major energy projects. We can see really significant uplift starting from around sort of 2017, 2016. And this is construction data from the ABS. and it's on projects that are yet to be done, projects in the pipeline at the moment. So we can see really huge growth, almost a tenfold increase over the past decade, going from around $2.5 billion worth of projects up to around 20 billion. So it's really, it's quite mind blowing just how much growth we've seen there, and that shift is both, scale. It's highly complex work that needs to be undertaken, and again, if we talk back to workforce planning in 2015, a decade ago, this really wasn't on our radar. But I guess coupled with that, so obviously that has a huge impact on the workforce we require. But coupled with that, on the graph on the right, you can see the volume of major infrastructure projects. So this is not just energy, it's more broadly, it's your hospitals, it's other major pieces of work that's going on. And you can see that, again, that's significantly lifted as well. So we've got not only the pressure from the large range of major energy projects putting that pressure on workforce, but we've also got significant needs outside of the sector for people with energy occupations. So I guess collectively, we can say that those trends are really a construction super cycle, not previously predicted. And as a result of that, if we look at the forecasts of workforce we need, we're looking at, in electricians alone, around another 42,500 by 2030. So really significant growth there.
Pete, if it's okay if I can add, I just wanted to add to that data as well. So Build Skills had provided some of their information about the major infrastructure projects that are in play for construction out to 2027, and there's $300 billion worth of investment already in the pipeline in major infrastructure projects in Australia between now and 2027. That's a phenomenal and probably the largest spend we've ever seen. The utilities industry alone make up 50% of that infrastructure build. So there's a lot of competing demand for the same skill sets that are required and the same occupations that are required across industries. Thanks, Pete.
No worries. Thanks, Anthea. So through the engagement we've undertaken so far, and from what I talked about at the start across the survey, a range of meetings and the workshops and things like that, we've heard some core, I guess, ongoing issues and opportunities. Two of the ones that have really, keep resonating with us and really keep popping to the surface. The need to knock down the barriers to getting more apprenticeships, and that's both apprentices and apprenticeship opportunities. And also the technological change and the net zero goals are really opening up a range of post-trade skills gaps that are going to need to be filled to make sure that we've got the specialised and knowledgeable workers to undertake that work. If we have a bit of a dive into it, we'll have a bit of a look at apprentices and apprenticeships first. And as we go through, please jump in, because some of this is quite sort of unique and new information that we've been able to bring to the surface. So first of all, I guess some success, the good news. So we can see there some significant growth in the apprentices in training. So this isn't commencement numbers, it's the volume of apprentices that are in training at that point in time. And we can see there, almost a 60% increase on a decade ago. So we're up at an all-time high at the moment of around 55,000 energy apprenticeships in training, and that's across all of the training packages that we look after. So UEE, UET, UEP, and UEG. So really significant increase. And the great thing about that as well is it's broad-based and sustained increase. We're seeing it across most jurisdictions. I think almost all jurisdictions. We're seeing it across metropolitan and regional areas. It's really consistent, which is brilliant. The other great area where we can see some progress is in women and First Nations people in apprenticeships for the energy sector. So we can see, again, some really significant growth, ranging from, there were only a little bit over 500 back in 2010, to, we're almost up at 3,500 for women, and almost a little bit over 2,000 for First Nations people in energy apprenticeships. So really heartening to see that growth, and to see, especially amongst some of the diverse groups that we want to attract to energy apprenticeships. But I guess there's an if to that, or a but, and that is the fact that we're not meeting the demand yet. So even though there has been that brilliant sustained growth, and that we're seeing that really broadly, we're not getting the growth that we're going to need to sustain the work that needs to be undertaken. So you can see here, based on some NCEVA data and some modelling that we've done here within PSO, we've still got a significant way to go. So we predict that we need to raise the number of apprentices in training by about 40% above the current levels, to meet the demand that is currently predicted. So the job's certainly not done. We can't be complacent. We know that there's a shortage of energy apprentices. Instead of that 55,000, which we're currently at the moment, and is that all-time high, we really need to reach closer to 75,000, which would get us much closer to that demand. But here's where the problem gets really sort of difficult. We know that there are currently about 280,000 energy trades workers across Australia, and that's in the 6 occupations that we talked about earlier. That demand's expected to grow to over 350,000 by 2030. But if we look at the current trends, we're only going to reach about 310,000. So, around 40,000 workers short. So really significant shortage there. And that's just to 2030. And one of the
sorry, Pete, I should have raised my
Yes.
hand. There is I wanted to sense check. Donna White has asked, where is that demand coming from? So which industries and locations? Thanks, Nathan. You were one step ahead of me. So Nathan's responded there. It's primarily related to net zero infrastructure at a domestic and industrial level. But I think the other thing to consider is these are energy trades that sit across the trading packages that we represent. But we know that a lot of those electricians in particular, but a lot of the other energy trades that are in shortage sit across multiple industries that are also seeing shortages of their workforce as well. Thanks, Pete.
No worries. And we also know that, there will be somewhat of a shift of need through to regional areas as well, with the rises of the renewable energy zones, and some of those large-scale projects, that there will be somewhat of a shift, but there's still going to be major need in the metropolitan areas as well. So if we talk about, I guess, what constrains that pipeline, we know we need a greater uplift of workforce. But as to how we get there, one of the other major problems we've encountered is a shortage of vet trainers. And I find this graph really interesting to see. So this plots from 1986 through till, I think, January of 2023 is the most recent data that was available. And it shows that the volume of vet trainers has largely stayed quite static. There has been really little uplift in the overall volume of vet trainers there to train our workforce. Now, I will caveat this by saying it is across all industries and sectors. So we unfortunately don't have access to data which shows the volume of electrical or energy vet trainers throughout Australia. It's all grouped into one bucket. But we know with the rise of fee-free TAFE. We know with the significant workforce needs across a range of other sectors as well, and the 55,000 apprentices in training that we looked at in the energy sector, we know that that's really not going to support the volume of uplift that we need. We need to see significant growth, not only in the apprentices and trainees for the energy workforce, but also those vet trainers. If we don't have them in place, we're really not going to be able to service that increase of apprentices. And that's not even mentioning, I guess, the requirements in terms of post-trade training as well. Or I might just stop there for a sec. Is there anyone, I can see there are some questions sort of popping up in the chat. Are there anything, did anyone want to speak to any of those questions, or was there anything particular that we wanted to sort of draw out? I'm just having a bit of a read through. Oh, yes.
So that was a great question asked by Nilakashan. I'm so sorry, that's terrible, but beautiful name. About the indicative breakdown of the workforce. And Nathan's come back with, it is a really great question on how we see that we'll respond to the numbers. I think we have to assume that the trade recognition pathway for these licensed roles isn't as straightforward as some of the other skilled occupation that sit on the skilled priority occupation list. And look, the majority of them will come through an apprenticeship, but some obviously in the engineering and the technician space will potentially come through the university system. I think, was it Jeff Davey, you had a good question too. There are a large number of jobs in renewable energy projects that can be carried out by non-qualified, non-trade qualified technicians. Is this cohort being captured and trained with relevant skill sets? I think that's a great question as well. At the moment, no. And the rationale being is that that training, what determines a skills shortage, there's a number of factors, and one of them is is there a workforce cohort? Some could argue that in regional centres where there's higher unemployment there is. It's also how quickly it takes to skill that person to do the role. So at the moment, we've been very focused on the roles that are in shortage rather than the entire workforce, but it's certainly something that will come through as we mature our capability.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anthea. Great. So we'll have a bit of a look now at apprentices and trainees, and or apprentices and apprenticeships, and what we've heard in that space. And you know, there are a few key themes that really sort of popped up in this space. And one of them, and we'll have a look at this shortly, at what the employers who are employing these apprentices and trainees, what their cohort looks like. But we've heard really clearly that there are concerns that the major projects that are coming online are predominantly employing third and fourth year apprentices, and they're really poaching them from those small businesses, which are the real engine room for where we start to build that workforce. So they're being poached when they're at their most valuable. They are, you know, at that point of having some skills to be able to provide a really valuable contribution within the workplace. So losing them in that third and fourth year can be really devastating for small businesses, and we'll explore that a little bit more in a minute, but that was one of the key themes. Another key theme, and again, this is quite enduring, mature age apprentices are quite expensive, especially again if we're talking about small and medium businesses who are doing a lot of that employing. But the demand is there for those opportunities. So we have a volume of you know, women and people who are over the age of 21 who are keen on transitioning into energy workforce positions, but are unable to find the apprenticeship opportunities to make that entrance into the sector. And we know, again, another really enduring problem, and probably maybe a little bit less felt within our sector than in some others, but certainly a problem nonetheless, the stigma and awareness related to apprenticeship pathways, certainly through the secondary schooling sector and, I guess public perceived value of trades versus university pathways. So we'll have a bit of a dive into that as well. If we first have a look at apprentice poaching, and I'm sure this one's going to be interesting for quite a lot of you, it's been data that's really been hard to shine a light on previously, so it's great to see it displayed, and I know our team have worked hard on being able to display this. So we can see here that the majority of changes of employer in the apprenticeship are happening in that third and fourth year by a large volume. We also know that throughout the life of the apprenticeship, almost 2 in 5 of those apprentices will change their employer. And again, with most of that movement happening in the third and fourth year. We know a lot of that's being driven by the skills shortages and the current number of major projects that are coming online. We know they need mature workforce who have the level of skills that is more aligned with the late stages of the apprenticeship. But we also know that without intervention and without some strategic planning, that this issue is going to continue, and it's going to really impact again, the engine room of how we onboard people into the sector. And that is probably, I think it's the next slide. I'll skip forward a little bit too much. Oh no, sorry, it is this slide. So we can see here where the majority of apprentices are currently employed. We can see that it's almost 80% are employed within a small or medium-sized business. So, we need to make sure that small and medium-sized businesses are staying engaged with the apprenticeship system, because if they're not, we're not going to have those apprenticeship opportunities to be able to reach the levels of growth we need. So that burning of small businesses through the poaching of apprentices in their third and fourth year is really having a detrimental effect. It also means that major projects really aren't adding new workforce. They're really just drawing on the range of apprentices which are already to some degree within the industry. And we've had some solutions raised here. We've had people talk about the Australian Skills Guarantee and the quotas that are required on these major projects for apprentices. And is there opportunity for a change in policy to have those quotas directed at new entrants to the energy sector, which I think is a great idea. We've heard about some best practice around the country, or some unique policy around the country. South Australia has a fee that's required to be paid if an apprentice is poached in certain year levels. There are a range of, I guess, mechanisms we can look at here, but it's certainly something that we're keen to explore more and to see what can be done, because again, I guess the impact of small and medium businesses being turned off the apprenticeship system is potentially huge at a time when we really need them to be engaging more. I can see a lot of comments coming through. Is there anything in particular there that's yes, I can see Jared Dottie's talking about poaching will always occur when tier 1 companies hold short-term 2 to 3 year projects in regional areas and do not have any incentive to spend time training new apprentices in an area. They may not have future work, not sure what their options are. Yeah, it's a great point, and I think the rise of renewable energy zones might help with some of that when we know there's going to be a volume of work and projects clustered in a particular area. We know that other mechanisms like group training organisations can certainly contribute to this as well, and have a positive impact. But agree, it's an ongoing issue.
If I can add to that too, Pete, Nigel Hayward, thanks for your commentary. Really appreciate it. Look, we agree the traditional responses aren't enough, and that's proven, right, with the numbers up front, seeing that we've got these core occupations and core like trades that have been in shortage for 20 years, and yet we keep doing the same thing and hoping that that will change and be fixed. I think one of the things that we've recognised and that people talk about next is that it's not just about a shortage of apprentices, it's a shortage of apprenticeships. And there's a real barrier in the system that is multi-pronged, right? It's not just one place that is driving that. Certainly we see major projects and the larger tier 1, tier 2s, you know, creating the same behaviour and not being held to account, right? So when they put their contracts in, they say yes, they'll agree to apprenticeship numbers, they'll agree to, you know, employing X amount, but those quotas are often set at commencement, not completion, which I think is the wrong metric with which we're judging this, the success of this by. But they're also not, there's no accountability. They're not held to account on those numbers. It's about, can you finish the project on time and on budget? So there's a lot of levers that could still be pulled to do things differently. I'll hand back to you, Pete.
Right, thank you. Oh, we've got a question from Betty.
Hi, so I'm Betty from Simpra Gemini. We do have like basically, because working on those energy projects, so we increase our printers intake. Really, I would say in the last 4 years is more than double of our numbers. Currently, we have around 200 apprentices and trainees within our program. But what I found is like the government, like there's a lot of restriction, basically limited us to increase our numbers. First of all, the RTO, we like majority of the state, we only have one RTO will be able to deliver the qualification. And then if that RTO don't have enough trainer, they limited the class or the intake numbers, then we basically won't be able to increase our apprenticeship number. So there's limitation in that sense. And also, I believe the government also doesn't, in one way, they keep saying they're promoting apprenticeship and traineeship, but in the other way, they cut back all the incentive payment. So there's investing in one single apprentice is really expensive exercise. Yes, TAFE is not free, particularly for our apprentices. We need to pay double because we will have 2 trainers per classes, and the government only fund 1 trainer. So the employer need to fund for the second trainer to be there to train. So all these add up is basically limited the number of apprenticeship available to increase the workforce.
Betty, I just want to say. Yeah, thank you. That's really great feedback. And it's one of the things that we love about these conversations is we know that there is context we need to apply in a number of places. One of those layers is the state and territory layer, because we know that, you know, it's a federation model. And I see that Rebecca Fitzgerald is sort of in agreement that in the distribution and transmission space, it's the bottleneck in the vocational education and training system when it comes to having enough qualified trainers is, I think, the biggest issue that we need to solve in this dilemma that we have in front of us. We are currently undertaking a piece of work that looks specifically at this. Every JSC, all 10 of us have been tasked with providing that lens, because as you will have seen in the data that Pete provided around the vet trainers, we don't have any insight into, we've got a total number, but we have no idea how many trainers are able to deliver against each training package or each qualification. That's a really massive data blind spot. And because of that blind spot, it's hard to really clearly articulate, other than say we know we need a shit ton more. It's really hard to clearly articulate where we need them. What is the demographic profile? What regions are they located in, and are they needed in? And so we're really hoping that that project pushes us way more forward than we've been in the last decade, because it's really important that we move to that action stage to make this change. And look, we're in an environment where there's, at least at the federal level, an appetite to do some really system-changing things. What would be really good is maybe Betty and Rebecca, if you're comfortable, if the team could reach out to have a conversation with like the specific funding issues that you're facing, so that we can make sure that that context is live and added to our workforce plan, because the workforce plan will hold a state-by-state view. So if you're okay with that, it would be really, really great if we could reach out and have a chat.
More than happy to have a conversation. I know that Rebecca will be the same. We
Yes,
know each other well.
Yeah, definitely. Betty and I would be more than happy to just put this under a spotlight, actually, because it's a big problem that's been chatted about for many, many years, and we don't seem to be getting any traction, and it's just getting worse. It's basically the industry is being supported by CitiPower and Gemina at the moment.
Right. Okay.
The state,
really.
the Holmesglen. Yeah. So those things are being supported by private operators, really.
In that enterprise RTO space.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
No problem.
Brilliant insights. Thank you. So the second key barrier that we were sort of keen to draw out in the apprentice space is the high cost of mature age electrical apprentices. So that's someone who's commencing an apprenticeship after they're 21 years of age. And that's compared to junior apprentices. So we can see here the base pay difference. And, you know, if we look at that solely, we're looking at about a 45% increase in costs. And that results to around $40,000 at the lower end across the full apprenticeship. And now, based on the modern award, I guess there are different pay rates according to if someone has finished year 12 or not. If we're looking at someone who has finished year 12 versus a mature age apprentice, we're looking closer to $50,000 across the life cycle. And when we start factoring in things like superannuation, penalty rates and overtime rates and things like that, potential payroll tax, then that number increases again, and we can really be close to $60,000 across the life of the apprenticeship. And what that's really resulting in is a lack of those apprenticeship opportunities aimed at mature age people who are often looking for those opportunities. And we know as well, I guess, that with mature age apprentices, they are also more likely to complete. So we have, the larger volume of apprentices through the mature age system that we can get will certainly pay off further down the track. We've heard loud and clear that incentives based at mature age apprenticeship opportunities are a real lever that needs to be in place. The other side of this is we know that compared to in the male-dominated trade occupations, that women especially are far more likely to undertake a mature age apprenticeship. Consistently more than double of those men who are undertaking in those trades. So when we talk about, increasing our diversity throughout the workforce, again, this is a real key opportunity where some funding or some policy levers that have been cited could really have an impact in not only increasing the workforce, but also increasing that diversity. But we do need to look at how we can support small businesses to make that viable for them. Betty?
Yes, I think I just being a devil advocate, like I think bringing in the apprentices, the female apprentices, getting through the program most of the time is not the issue. It's after fact keeping them in the industry, supporting them throughout, because as you know, that female maybe have a slightly different sort of focus. They will get married and then after they will have kids. I think a lot of the employees not prepared to, if they look at long term, they are not prepared to invest in that areas. So that's why the pickup rate is so low, because isn't what you're expecting, you invest them for these 4 years and then you keep them in the business. But how can you keep them in the business, particularly for the medium or small size business? Let them go for 12 months maternity leave and then come back. Is it possible? So there's a lot to look at, instead of just saying increasing the female participation rate for the apprenticeship.
And
Yeah,
that's
really great
reflected in
comment.
the licensing data, Betty, as well. And it's something that will own. We don't have a full view of the licensing, because you can hold your license but not be on the tools. So it's not as easy an indicator. But certainly we see the retention rate. So whilst we've got this increasing number of completions of women completing their trade, we've got static level of participation of actual licensed workers. So the number of women completing is getting higher and higher, but the number of people who actually hold a license and are staying in the trade is static. And so we know a lot of the drivers of that. There's a lot of work to be done culturally to shift that.
Yeah, I think you'll find that if you reach out to a lot of the major employer, you'll find that I heard that, like, as in one instance is they have a good intake of good 50 female apprentices, but after 6 or 7 years, they only have 1 or 2 still stay in the business.
Yeah. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So the third significant issue that has really been popping up quite commonly is that is limiting the volume of apprenticeships, and in this case we're looking more at the supply side, so more at the volume of people who are applying for apprenticeship opportunities. Is that long-term stigmatisation of apprenticeships by school and parents, and the general public perception of the value of a trade career versus a university pathway. And look, some great insights there. 8 out of 10 people said their parents pushed them towards white collar careers. We know that significant research has been done into the primary drivers behind why young people choose certain career paths, and we know that parents and teachers are the most significant contribution towards their choices. So we know that there's a range of work to be done here, and this is really this isn't a problem that's unique to the energy sector. It's really across all trade pathways, and we can see really interesting here the young men versus young women and their preferred post-school pathways, and we can see that only around 14% of young men are looking at apprenticeships as their preferred pathway, and only about 5% of young women. So again, really significant work we need to do there to change the perceptions of parents, of teachers, and of young people around the value of a trade pathway. Yeah, great point. Roger's just put in about the cultural change required to accommodate women and more diversity within the industry, and that we're getting there. Absolutely. There's some great positive change going on out there, and some really great pillars of best practice. So it's great to see those, and how we embed those throughout the industry more broadly, I think, is the real key to overcoming some of those diversity issues. We can see here that that stigma around trade pathways is also not just for women, but it's also cultural based as well. So when we look at culturally and linguistically diverse people, we can see again that they're far more likely to look at white collar pathways as opposed to the trades. So, and when we've talked about solutions in that space, we've talked about school initiatives and about embedding renewable energy and the concepts behind renewable energies throughout the curriculum. So not just STEM-based subjects, but how do we incorporate it more as the ongoing language throughout the secondary school curriculum? And there are some great projects going on in that space. We can also see some great instances of best practice, certainly throughout Europe, and Germany's always a great model that we look to in how they address these sort of issues. But again, it's an enduring problem in Australia that we need to look at solving. There has been progress, but more work certainly still to do.
And Pete, if I can add there, Lisa Harmer and I met with Minister Giles, who's the minister that we report into, yesterday. And one of the questions he had was around the number of people coming into the energy sector and into energy trades from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. It's a point of note, and he's former multicultural minister, multicultural affairs, but it's something that he's noticed that's quite stark when he goes out and visits a lot of TAFEs and trade centres. He's certainly noticing the lack of representation that's there in the apprenticeship. So I thought that was quite interesting that was something that he called out in our meeting yesterday.
Thank you. Now we'll give you a bit of a taster. So the second half of this presentation, which we delivered at the summit, we're going to hold off over for the next Insights meeting. So that'll cover post-trade skills gaps, which again, we're keen to get some good discussion going on. We'll give you a bit of an insight into what we've heard so that you can maybe mull it over and think about some discussion points. But what we've really heard through the engagement so far related to post-trade skills needs, we've heard about the integration of software throughout, both commercial and residential systems and electronics and the Internet of Things, and how they're going to need post-trade skills related to that. We've heard about EVs and EV charging, and we're not only talking about, I guess, residential infrastructure there, we're also talking about the infrastructure that might be required for heavy vehicles, buses and the like, and heard about the, the high voltage requirements around that, high voltage DC requirements. We hear a lot about the renewables, both large and small scale, and the differentiation between those, and the skills that will be required for each. Something called the suitability conundrum. So we've got some data called SARA data, so the survey of employers who have recently advertised, that really plots the volume of applicants against a role and how many of them were deemed suitable for that role. And there's some really interesting insights there as to how employers are seeing the pool of applicants for positions and how many of them might be suitable, even though, they are licensed. There's that gap between the skills that they need them to have for the contextualized work that they're undertaking versus the licensed skills. Planned migration is certainly a big one that has popped up time and time again, and also how we embed continuing professional development, CPD, throughout the trades and really turn them into lifelong learning careers. We know that these technologies are going to require significant ongoing training. So how do we ensure that the workforce is engaging with that training and upskilling so that they can meet those new technologies? That's about it from my section. I'll just... Sorry, I've flipped through a bit too far there. Just super quickly, the workforce plan here, you can see a timeline / next steps. We're in the process at the moment of drafting stage 1 based on the information that and the engagement that you've all provided so far. From here, we'll release a consultation paper in around the middle of next month that we'll welcome feedback on. It will have some of the high-level data points and some of the themes and things like that. We'd love to hear feedback on that. Does it resonate with what you want to see? Is it of interest? Have we misunderstood some things? Is anything misrepresented? Things like that. From there, we'll gather that feedback, draft to some targeted feedback with key organisations in government, final draft, and we'll be releasing the 2025 workforce plan in around August. So still certainly opportunities to be involved with that. Our workforce skills survey is still open. If you haven't participated in it so far, if you haven't had your input, please do. It's open for about another week. And we're particularly interested, there's still a few gaps, so we'd love to hear from women in the energy sector. We'd love to hear from people within UEG, so gas transmission, and we'd also love to hear from students and apprentices. So the volume of responses from those cohorts is a little bit low, so we'd love to see a high volume there just to make sure that we're accurately capturing the issues, barriers and opportunities. So that's it from me. Thank you for your patience. I'll pass over to Brett, who's going to give you an update on all things projects.
Thank you, Peter. Next slide. So our UEE RA 0051 review project is now gone live on TGA. So the new unit, which is RA 99 without the other letters, is up now on TGA, so that's become live, and along with the 7 qualifications that needed to be updated that had that unit in it, and 2 skill sets. So if you just have a quick look at the timeline there, it was released yesterday, so perfect timing for this meeting. So it's got a 12-month transition, so the 26th of March 2026 for the transition of that. But yeah, go to TGA and have a look at the new unit and the updated qualifications for that one. So our essential performance capabilities review, we've now published a report on the website that's out for consultation. You can go through the QR code there, or if you just navigate to our website and go to the projects page, look up the ERAC Essential Performance Capabilities Review, and you can provide some feedback, read the report, and we'd love to get some feedback from you. That feedback will close on the 25th of April 2025. So just an update on our other projects, and I just noticed someone asked a question about that LV panel, which I'll get to in a sec. So those UET rescue and refresher units are actually with the final drafts are with the Juror Assurance Body being assessed. The question was around the electrician qual. Because that LVR unit is a core in that qual, to update it is a major change, which would mean an update of the qualification. So we've got a submission in with Juror at the moment to look at all the UEE qualifications across the board and a full review. So that would be wound in with that. But there is, on ASQA's advice, you can deliver the new unit in a qualification. If you go to ASQA's website, you can see their advice around that. If there's a superseded qual, you can deliver the new one if it's supported by industry. The consolidation of competency development units is also with the Juror Assurance Body for assessment. So we're just waiting to hear back with that. And finally, the creating an energy sector gateway, so the Cert 2s, they're back for review, and there's a proposal that we'll be looking to split into 2 distinct projects, one being the gateway, which would be primarily for school students, and then a full review of the existing Career Start Cert 2 that's out there. So as I said, all those projects are available via our project page. That Energy Sector Gateway will certainly be looking for some more stakeholder consultation with developing those 2 distinct projects. So yeah, go to our project page, have a look. You can provide feedback on the ones that are open for feedback. You can also just through links on our website, you can ask any questions relating to any of those projects as well. So yeah, hit up the webpage and have a look.
Great, thanks, Brett. There's one question here. Are the OSCA codes for electricians being included into the ERAC review project, especially the wording in electrician general selects, installs, tests, in non-industrial settings? Patrick, what we've decided to do there is we need to do a full review of the training package so that the next stage of reviews, the ERAC work will roll into, and it will incorporate things like the OSCA codes. So yes, it will be included.
Thanks, Anthea.
And Nick will take that on advice, then we'll look at that after. Okay, over to you, Lisa Harmer.
Thanks, Anthea. Yeah, just to give you guys a bit of an overview of dates to put in your calendar. The survey that Pete was talking about for the workforce plan closes on the 4th of April. So if you haven't done so already, please do be part of that. And then there's a consultation paper coming out in mid-April that aligns to the workforce plan there. At the end of April, we'll have our strategic industry advisory body coming together. So we'll look forward to that. And we've popped the dates there for the next TAG meeting. So please do pop them in your diaries ahead of invites going out. And again, as Peter mentioned already, the 14th of August will be when we publish our workforce plan. So we're gearing up and doing all of the work there for that report. And then hot off the press, we wanted to let you know that we will be taking part in the All Energy Australia conference on the 30th of October, the 29th to the 30th of October. Now this, for those of you who aren't aware, is one of the largest energy conferences. It's held in Melbourne, and the really good news is it's free to attend. So we hope to see many of you there. We'll be running one of the rooms all day, so we'll have a number of speakers that we'll be putting on. And that's it from me. Over to you, Anthea.
Thank you. Look, we are at time. I see Pete and Nathan, great minds think alike, have both popped that in. I see, Mary, just very quickly to that, we're hoping to find out in the next couple of weeks. The reason we haven't we didn't talk about all of the ones that we've got in application is because they haven't been approved, but hopefully by next Insights we'll be able to really walk you through what our roadmap is for the next 12 months. I'll pause there. We will review the questions. Anything that we've missed, Philip Dodd.
Yeah, I was just going to stay with that cert too. That rolls into the same thing that you were saying there. The question that was from Nick about the cert 2, that rolls into that same approval we're waiting for. So we'll hear shortly on that, and we'll have some better timeframes as soon as we do.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, we'll call it there. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation and questions. Really, really valuable. We'll continue to review these questions and come back to any that we've missed. And once again, thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Take care.